I found it hard to craft this session without talking about a topic that I think every B2B marketer needs to know really well. I think it's the most overlooked and under-discussed element of B2B. And everyone I speak to, once they've been through that discussion with me, agrees, wow, this is super duper important. And so I hope that you leave feeling refreshed, having talked about this topic, and inspired and excited to build it into your program if you haven't already. I just want to read a quote from a really cool article that summed it up really well. Perhaps one of the most overlooked aspects of running a successful business is the art of brand positioning. All too often, an organization's positioning starts off weak and only gets worse from there as managers and owners attempt to appeal to a wider and wider audience. The tactic makes sense. They see it as a way to increase market share or shareholder value. This approach is particularly common among service firms. Poor positioning not only results in ineffective marketing, it also has serious financial implications. Poor positioning will most likely lead to the commoditization of your firm and its products and services, negatively affecting its financial performance and overall value. What they're saying here is that if you're unable to explain clearly and simply why your business would be the best choice over the other options available, people will most often commoditize your product or service, meaning they buy on price alone. And so this negatively affects the performance of the business. I want to share with you one of my favorite adverts in the world, which I think shows brand positioning really well. An advert for Fisher-Price. It's a really old school 70s ad. What we see here is one child standing up with the biggest grin he's ever seen. If you're a parent, this melts your heart. And that's it. There's a gap where there could be other children. And it says, which of these 3 kids is wearing Fisher-Price anti-slip roller skates? And of course, we only see one child, which tells us that the other 2 kids have fallen down. Why is this such impeccable brand positioning? Well, they're not just talking about why their skates are really safe, which is ultimately the pain point of the buyer. So the child is not the audience, the parent is the audience. They will have done insight work to find that parents' concern when buying roller skates is safety concerns. Is my child going to fall down? Is everything going to be okay? You know, these types of concerns. So they've got the anti-slip roller skate is the product. They've got a happy looking kid. He's enjoying his experience with the roller skates. They've not only highlighted that they can meet the pain point of the parent, of the customer, the ideal client, they're also positioning the other options as dangerous. I'm not suggesting that we need to make the alternatives to our B2B companies seem dangerous. However, the theory is that we're not just talking about why we're the best option, we're also moving others out of the picture by tapping into those frustrations and pain points. This advert really cleverly does that. So what can we do? How are we going to start this today? Okay, so there's 2 things. When we think about brand positioning, and I'm going to talk in more detail about what it is and how to create it, what we need to find out is who is our ideal client? Who is really our ideal client? This is not just about who buys from us currently and who will buy from us. It's about deep diving into our business to find out who actually is the best fit type of client that we want to go after. And secondly, what do they care about? What is important to them? Not just who are we and what do we do? In order to define who your ideal client should be as a business, what you want to start with is looking at 3 areas. So you can look into financial data. You can look at the profitability of your different accounts. So you can spend some time with your directors, your finance director, your operations teams, your sales directors to find out, look, of all the customers we work with, can we look at some pie charts of different sectors or characteristics that make them different? Have we got different bandings? Have we got the average annual spend clients less than 20,000 up to 50,000 above 100,000 and categorize them as gold, silver, platinum? And then look at if anything in common, anything that makes them really great to work with. You want to be asking questions such as, who would we clone times 1,000 as a customer? Who do we feel would be the absolute best customer for us? Who have we loved working with? And you can use financial data for that, looking at who's the most profitable. And it's not only financial data, but it's also things like resourcing, speaking to operations teams about which type of customers are a real pain in the bum. Are there customers who take up loads of resource, who've got loads of complaints, who are really tricky to deal with, that we almost want to avoid? We also want to look at operational success. Do we get them the results they want? There's companies I've spoken to where they're overlooking a whole segment of client where they find it really, really easy to meet those clients' needs. They're really profitable and it's a walk in the park to them to actually deal with these people. And so I think that we can often strive to make our service bigger and better than everyone else when we forget about the basics of those guys are really easy to deal with. They love us. We do a great job. And we're a lot better than the competitors at doing this. And this is where you can get into looking at whether to niche or not. There's a big argument to say that the more specialist you can be, the easier it is for people to place you somewhere and the happier they are that you are better than the other options available. So operational success, how successful are they? Because if we exist to solve their problems, how much are we getting them over the line? If you're a company that provides tech for companies and they are having trouble implementing that, maybe the sector's not best fit, maybe you need to move to a different area. So really looking at who is a best fit in terms of success on all parts, because you want great case studies too. You want to work with people who really value what you do. And then in terms of values and drivers, it's also like, if you think about your business and its brand, what does it stand for? What does it care about? What is it that these end clients want to get to and achieve? And are you aligned in that front? I would definitely say we shouldn't just be focused on who are the clients we deal with, whoever can deal with us. It's got to be, who do we want to work with as well? And that can be such a great conversation. There's another quote here that I really enjoyed from Forbes. It's not uncommon to hear, especially from service-based businesses, that what they offer is suitable for everyone. This is where so many business owners fall flat. They have such a generic offer that it doesn't strongly capture the attention of anyone. Having a niche is key. You may argue that this narrows your market and the number of suitable clients, but what it actually does is enable you to appeal to an audience that truly values what you do. The more you come to know your ideal client, the easier it's going to be for you to create content that speaks directly to them. You become magnetic. When a potential client feels like you get them, your offer becomes so much more appealing. And this was written by a chief officer at Forbes, so it wasn't a contributing article. This was by someone at Forbes. In a bit, I am going to share some examples of brand positioning pieces I've done for my clients, so you can see all of this come to life. But before we do that, we're going to look at some of the bits on ideal client. So what does the ideal client care about? So we really need to look at what problem is it that they need solving? What is their issue? Because lots of companies, and it's really difficult for us marketers too, especially if we're removed from our audience, we need to really find ways to understand what problem do they have that they need help with? What problem can we solve? Something that's really useful as well is what have they tried, so that we know where they're at, what are their frustrations. So you could have it, and it's not even about things they've tried in terms of competitors. It could be a financial controller who needs a new accounting software, and things that she's tried is managing it in-house and having employees and having spreadsheets everywhere, and it hasn't worked. So that would then be a frustration and something that can be talked about through the marketing messaging. We also really want to understand their goals overall. Who are they and where are they trying to get to and what do they want to achieve overall? And that's really helping us to get into the head of our ideal client. So when we're thinking about our marketing messaging, we always want to start with the ideal client, nailing who we want our ideal client to be, who we want to go after, and what they care about. And I'm going to share an example of an ideal client. This is an example of a made up person because I didn't want to share a client one today. So Alison is 47. She's a financial controller within a large manufacturing business. She works from home in Guildford, visiting the headquarters in London a couple of days a week. So we've got a section on her role. She reports to the CEO and manages 2 finance managers who oversee the department. We want to get into our head, who is this person? I genuinely think that B2B ideal client personas are way too focused on like consumer-led demographics. I don't think they're necessary personally in B2B, and from what I've seen and from all of the work that I've done, I think we much more need to just get to what's the need, what's the pain point. So in terms of personality attributes, she's very cautious when it comes to finances of the business. She likes to keep control. She's assertive and likes people to get to the point. She's also thoughtful and understanding. Now, again, it's our ideal client. We want her to be someone who gets to the point, but we also want her to be a listener. So that's why that's in there. This is the type of person we love working with. Pain points are she spends too much time chasing payments on invoices. Her time is often diverted away from proactive planning and absorbed in operational duties. This is her pain point. It's not in the context of what we sell. It's just her biggest pain point. So in the context then of what the made up company that I've got here, so that the made up company is that we are a financial software company. And so her need, she has been reviewing the accounts for the company and has noticed an increase in the number of accounts payable. In the last board meeting, she was asked by her peers specifically on this and has been tasked with finding a cost-effective solution and streamlined process. Why that's important is it reminds us that there are multiple decision makers involved. So it's not just her decision. This is the difference with B2B and B2C. She has to run this past her colleagues. Alison is very active on social media and frequently interacts with other businesses who are using payment processing companies. So maybe she's in a Facebook group with other financial people who give each other advice. Maybe she's on LinkedIn and reads articles. She'd like to streamline her department, is looking to outsource the payment processing of the business to an external provider, hopefully us. Alison has received recommendations from various other financial controllers. She has also seen a few blog articles on social media that outline the benefits of using payment processing companies. However, she is concerned with the cost per transaction. So here we're getting so much juicy stuff about what she cares about and what we need to talk about in our messaging. And this is not made up, because in a minute I'm going to show you how to gather these insights so that your ideal client persona is not just something you've plucked out of thin air. It's based on things that someone like Alison has said to you, like over the phone. From previous experience, Alison knows that streamlining her department and outsourcing payment processing can speed up the process and can let the business focus on other important areas, owing to the business goals being growth for the years ahead. She also knows that a huge upheaval and it could be painful. I like to put in home life education goals because I just think it makes this person feel real. And when we're creating our content strategies, we can literally picture Alison. And I always encourage marketers to have, say they've got 3 personas, or even 1, put them on their desk, and every time, how is this helping Alison? Is this useful to Alison? Home life, she's married with 3 teenage kids. Her parents are older, she regularly visits them. She's got a master's degree in economics and she's ACCA qualified, and her goals are ensuring all the accounting activities up to date, etc., etc. So this is the type of thing that you want to be creating, but we want it to come from a place of insights, not making them up. Okay, so we know what brand positioning is now. How do we get there? How do we get this for our business? The purpose of the piece of work. So you could call it the brand positioning project. And honestly, this is where I start with pretty much every B2B company that I consult with and do project work with my partners. We pretty much always start here because there's not ever been a situation where a B2B company has come to me and this has already been nailed, which is why there's such a gap and such an opportunity to do this. The purpose of the brand positioning piece is to identify why clients should choose us in order to then assess our current positioning. So by doing insights, we are then able to assess our current messaging and position to go, is it right? Is it wrong? Does it need some work? And it's also to create a single-minded core thought, i.e., going forward, central to every piece of marketing communication that we put out, we've got this clear single-minded core thought and we creatively executed it. I'm also going to share some examples of creative execution, because what you do not want is this brand positioning document that says, here's why we're better and different than everyone else and why you should choose us, and it just sits in a folder somewhere. It definitely needs to inform the creative going forward and the messaging and the materials that you put out. I'll share some examples of that too. in the last few minutes. In order to develop the brand positioning, what inputs do we need? There's 3. We need to identify our client needs and pain points, so find out those, and that's through the form of interviews. We need to understand our competitors' strengths, not weaknesses necessarily. We do need that as well, but we also need to understand their strengths. What's the best foot forward that they are putting out there? Because if we're all the same, it's not actually a strength, it just becomes white noise. And then we need to define our brand strengths and expertise. Most companies only focus in this area, and that's where they fall down. Hi, we're experts in XYZ. We've been going for 20 years and we've got a team of 35 people accredited to the highest standards, and you can trust us and we're the best, and you can, here's some examples of our work. But then because of all of the competitors also say that, it doesn't really do anything, because they've also got good case studies and they've also are able to say why they're experts, which is a hygiene factor when you think about it, because if I'm hiring you, I want you to be an expert. It doesn't really mean anything to me when you tell me you're an expert. So over here, we need the customer's needs. So we're going to find out what those are. And we also need to know the competitor strengths so that we can position ourselves well away from that. And that area there, where the customer's needs and our brand's expertise away from the competitor's strengths, that's our communications sweet spot. That is like the most exciting thing in the world to me. So step 1 of 3, gather the insights. We are going to do a business insight assessment. When I do this for clients, it's a bit of a workshop, and we really just do a few more exercises to really nail down, here's exactly what we want and where we want to get to, because it's no point just being a slave to clients. We actually do need to have some say in what we're going for and who we are. And then we need to do some competitor positioning research, which is a piece of work, desk research, and we look at how are they positioning themselves? Do they have a central message? What key themes do they talk about in their marketing? Most of the times when I conduct these, it's like 8 out of the 10 assessed, no brand positioning, no brand positioning, no brand positioning, which makes me so excited because it's just such an opportunity for these brands to stand apart. We then conduct client insight interviews to find out what they care about. I just want to make it clear here that this is not a feedback or satisfaction survey. We're asking questions to find out why we're really good. And it seems a bit weird, like, oh, tell us why we're better, because that's like odd. That's not the type of thing that you necessarily say in a feedback survey, because you want to find out how to get better. This is specifically a piece of work to find out why we're awesome. Why do you choose us? And that's like a big difference. And it's very strategically laid out. I have to craft the questions really carefully based on the client. Some examples of some questions that can be asked. Why did you choose to work with us? Who are our closest competitors? How are we better than our competitors? Why might you choose someone else in the future? One of my favorites, if you could improve one thing about us, what would it be? There's loads of different questions and they're all cherry picked based on the client, but it helps us to really get into their head and be really clear about what they actually care about. So what do we do next? We need to develop the brand positioning statement. What is the brand positioning statement? This is the first step. So a positioning statement is not only about what you do, because that's what most B2B companies talk about. We do this, and it's really great for this type of person because it's this benefit here. But it is about the benefit to your target customer of what you do differently from your competition and why they should believe it. It should be able to encompass the reason for buying from you and not someone else. And every company I speak to who's service-based starts by saying, I really don't think we're actually different. I don't think this is going to work for us because there's nothing we can say that our competitors can't say. Absolutely. But there will be things about your approach, about the way that you do things, about your team, about how you do it that will be able to differentiate you. And at very best, given that generally in most B2B markets, positioning is very poor, even if you become the company that's able to better articulate your point of the facets of your business that would be a good reason for people to work with you, if you're able to articulate that better than your competitors, you'll also have competitive advantage. Step 3 is develop brand narrative. The brand narrative is the external expression of the brand positioning statement. It's a communication boilerplate. What we're going to do is start with an example of a client's brand positioning statement with the shorthand options. You could call shorthand almost a brief to the creative team, who will then take it into writing the creative execution and creating the creative. Wow, creating the creative, that is snappy. It's very clunky. It's a very tricky read, but that's because it's almost a brief to somebody to take into the creative stage with options. Okay, so we're going to go from brand positioning statement through to brand narrative, through to creative concept execution, so you can see how the brand is built. And this is for my client, Y3S Loans. They are a really cool company. My client Barney hired us. He's the CEO. He's been fantastic to work with, and he really went through the process. This is actually like hot off the press because we haven't got the site live yet, but there's a couple of sites live I'll show you in a second. And he's given me permission to share this with you. So their brand positioning statement. So they deal with like mortgage brokers on getting specialist loans to their end clients, and they're really good at it. They're a leader at what they do. For finance intermediaries whose business and reputation relies on them getting difficult second charge loans over the line, Y3S is the specialist finance broker that you can really count on to completely take care of each and every case. Because, so here's the proof, we recognise that people don't often get the personal attention from lenders that they deserve, making the whole application process painful and often without the outcome that's needed. That's why our people go out of their way to help intermediaries deliver the finance their customers need, reliably, quickly, and with minimum fuss. We use our experience, know-how, and strong personal relationships with lending panels to get you a clear answer within an hour. And if it's a yes, which it usually is, you can leave the rest to us. We'll keep you updated every step of the way. And our unique and personal home delivery and completion service means your customers feel supported, cases are completed speedily, and you're paid more quickly. Now, before we created this brand positioning statement, this company had the typical B2B company of, we're one of the leading specialist finance brokers in the UK, and we're trusted by clients to XYZ. Here's examples of our work. We've been going for this many years, which means we really know what we're doing. We've now turned the whole thing from the client insights. We've literally regurgitated back what clients told us was important to them and what they like about this business. So we've come up with shorthand options, anything but ordinary, extraordinarily good service, completely taken care of, the power of positive thinking, uncommonly good lending, service as unusual, the art of the possible, impossible is nothing, really helpful lending. So these are all just throwing out their ideas for the creatives to roll with. And I produce this. So I do the insight piece, and then my partners at Really Helpful Marketing do this section. And then that turned into their brand narrative, which is essentially, you could think of it as on their homepage, the first few paragraphs. This is their central boilerplate for them to come back to. So Y3S, how to be a lending superhero. For customers who don't fit the ideal profile, borrowing against their home can be a really painful and often fruitless process. Turned down by the bank and other mainstream lenders, they may be desperate and looking to you to find a suitable deal. But time and time again, the computer says no, meaning time is increasingly of the essence. For the sake of both your professional reputation and your personal pride, you don't want to let them down. But sometimes it might feel like it's easier to give up and tell your customer it's not possible. At Y3S, we never think like that. We've created a unique and positive-minded approach, which focuses squarely on securing the finance a customer needs quickly and with the minimum fuss for you and your client. We understand that the right mindset is something that can't easily be taught. So unlike other brokers, we don't recruit our people based on their skills and experience. Instead, we focus on values and attitude and provide industry-leading training and development for the rest, which means our people always take full ownership of your case, providing a single point of contact, finding ways to be flexible and overcoming your challenges on the way. We work hard on building director-level relationships with lenders to give us access to deals that other brokers aren't even aware of, and importantly, enable to have our cases prioritized. As a result, we can give you a yes or no very quickly, often within an hour. If it's a yes, and it usually is, you can simply leave the rest to us, always keeping you in the loop and applying our rigorous quality control standards to ensure outstanding accuracy and reliability. Only when we're completely satisfied with the detail will we pass the case on to the real heroes of our business, Tony and Brian. They will cross river deep and mountain high to get to your customers in their own home or wherever they may be, by car, train, taxi or ferry, even at the airport at 4 a.m, and help them complete the paperwork with 100% precision to ensure your case gets over the line and your customers get the funds they need. So if you'd like your customers to think of you as a bit of a superhero, if you'd like to tell them yes, then talk to Y3S. There's a reason why we're the UK's largest specialist finance packager. And then the shorthand became completely taken care of. You can see here as well, guys, there's the values so that they can use those for internal, and some proof points. Proof points are really important in your brand positioning and brand narrative because it's essentially telling people, here's why you can believe what we're saying. You can see that this really elevated this brand much further than just we're the UK's leading. There's a ton of proof in there, and they're really talking about what the end client super cares about. Here's an example of how we then took that into creative concept. So like, what's the website going to look like? What's all the materials going to look like? So just one example of that is extraordinary as standard. And the main tagline for this business now is it's completely taken care of. Y3S, it's completely taken care of. One of the messages was, it's our people who always go further, react faster, think smarter. It's this standout service that helps intermediaries deliver the finance that customers need. There's loads of different executions on this idea, but this was one of the ones. And we're now in the process of getting them live. Calibro Consultants, so my client Stuart, he hired me to help with the marketing strategy. And again, we started with the brand positioning. These guys are specialist transport and drainage infrastructure planning consultants, so a really meaty sector. And so their positioning statement, again, the clunky internal piece, is for planners and developers who need the right support to ensure their transport and drainage plans meet with swift approval. Now, I just want to point out here, these guys believed that personal relationships is why people chose them. And we found from the insight work that it wasn't that at all. People stayed with them based on personal relationships, but actually there was so much more focus on, I just need to get my project over the line. And that is central to this whole piece that I'm sharing with you now. It was like, I don't care about any of that. I just want Calibro to help me get my project over the line. I want to start building. I want to get the show on the road. So keep that in mind when I go through this. Calibro is the specialist transport and drainage planning consultancy that you can trust to get your project over the line, because we really understand and apply what it takes to get the result you're looking for and work collaboratively with you to make it happen. You'll always have a senior partner taking responsibility for the quality of our specialist advice. We'll use our extensive experience to ensure we are fully informed of the bigger picture. Problem solvers and good communicators, we pride ourselves not only on our technical knowledge, but on our ability to present plans in a way that's simple to understand, making it easier for approvers to approve, and on our single-minded focus on finding solutions that ensure your development is delivered as planned. I told you they're clunky, okay? And then the different shorthand options, we're here to get your project over the line. Let's make it happen. Together, we make great plans a reality. I'll very quickly read the first couple of paragraphs of their brand narrative. We're here to get your project over the line. We all know that getting building projects approved for development can be a complex business, and it's particularly true when it comes to transport or drainage infrastructure. But at Calibro, we believe that we have the perfect formula for achieving the outcome you want quickly with the minimum commercial disruption for your development plans. We've built our business on a belief that when we provide high quality, clear advice that delivers results, we gain the trust of our clients and win more work. It's a simple philosophy and it hasn't let us down yet. So firstly, we'll never artificially offer low fees only to increase them at the first sign of trouble. Instead, we ensure that we're fully informed through an expert technical appraisal of the project, allowing us to appreciate the bigger picture, anticipate potential problems and mitigate them, giving you real confidence to move forward. All our proposals are presented in a way that dispenses with unnecessary technical jargon, using graphical techniques to ensure approvers are armed with clear, visual, understandable information that removes ambiguity, doubt, and uncertainty, allowing them to make sensible, informed, and quick decisions. We won't pretend we don't encounter problems, but when we do, our senior consultants thrive on the challenge, working tirelessly and collaboratively with both internal and external colleagues with the single-minded determination and focus needed to find the solutions to keep your project on track. At Calibro, we don't just plan, we're committed to making the plan a reality. And then the shorthand was, together we make great plans happen. So how did that translate into their creative, which is now live? Well, we came up with All Systems Calibro, playing on the idea of all systems go. We're ready to get your developments go ahead. So that's then been brought all the way through all of their marketing communications. Another cool project that I was really happy to work on. The last one I was going to share is a super quick one, and then we're going to do questions. This company is called TC Consult. This is a fun project. This is actually my husband's business. So it's like hilarious that I just basically made him do it. But yeah, so TC Consult are project managers. They help companies build hotels, things like that. And they thought that people chose them because they're really detailed reports and being trusted partner, all that stuff. They didn't. When I spoke to their clients, the clients cared about things like, I don't want a big lengthy report. I just want to know the top level, like what's going on, what do I need to put my attention to? I want to go home, I want to sleep at night. We came up with, this has always been one of my favorites. So they're called TC Consult, which is just the initials of the directors, Tambini and Champs. And we came up with like, how could we play on TC? So are you TC? Are you totally confident? We all know that building is an imperfect art. So when things don't go exactly to plan, you need to be totally confident that your project team really understands the needs of the building and pulls together to ensure the original objectives are met on time and on budget. At TC, we know that delivering successful building projects relies not only on specialist expertise, but also on great teamwork and excellent communications. So if the work doesn't go to plan, we're able to collectively collaborate with all stakeholders and suppliers and ensure the project stays on track. So you don't just get expert help, you get a down-to-earth and practical team that really knows how to get the job done. It's why we've been able to build successful long-term partnerships with clients such as Tesco, Principality Building Society and the government, just to name a few. When you have TC Consult on your team, you'll have total confidence that your project will be a success. At least that's one less thing to worry about. These people have so many worries about their building. So we used Be Totally Confident, BTC, and you can even see that in the logo is like Be Totally Confident as part of it. So that was a really cool one. And then that's how it came to life. That's not actually there. No problem. There was a piece of creative to show you that is not there, but essentially it was showing how that came to life. So what would be the next steps, just to finish? After that, you would then define your messaging hierarchy. So underneath your narrative, for each audience you have, so you have 3, like how does that translate into the different audiences? How do we then pick out the relevant pieces and slightly tweak that to each audience? You then, to move into operations, you would create themes out of that. So that boilerplate is a really good way to then craft some themes for your content and your marketing campaigns and plans. And then lastly, you want to integrate that into your overall marketing strategy and make sure that you're revisiting that regularly so that you are confident that you're not moving away from that brand positioning. I hope that was useful. That's the end of the presentation section of this webinar. If anyone would like to ask me a question and you would prefer to just talk to me, feel free to do that. While I wait for someone to do that, I'm just going to catch up with the comments. Sam says, agree with that. Personas in reality are just an average of a subset of your customer base. Yep, totally. So finding out those group, how do we group our customers? Katie says, yes, I work for a janitorial and workwear company, so all businesses really could use our products, yes, but focusing on becoming stronger with one sector seems to be working, which is education, universities and schools. So much easier to focus our content that way. I need to do some more focused personas though, so our directors understand why it's important to go down certain paths and implementing tactics. Yeah, Katie, and a great point to put there for you is that we don't always have to have like, okay, there's a separate user persona for this sector and that sector. We can also do work on finding out what is the common overarching pain points of sets of customers, because people sometimes believe that with messaging, you have to be very specific to each sector. But as long as we're not excluding people by being too generic in the message, we can group people together. Nicola says, would you create individual brand narratives for different products and customer types, or just focus on one that covers everything? Yes. So you want a brand narrative for the whole business. And so when you're doing the insight piece, you've got to make sure that you have clearly defined your products and service ranges. and that how you describe yourself is well summed up as your category. And then you want to make sure that the people that you interview, you've got a good set of all the different audiences. So once you've agreed these are our ideal audiences, you want to make sure that you say you're going to do 15 to 20 interviews and you've got 3 audiences. You want to make sure you're interviewing at least 5 people from each audience. It's a very specialist skill, gathering these insights, so it can be tricky. So if anyone has questions for me on how to do that, then obviously I'm always here. And so what you want to do is have that top level brand narrative that covers the business as a whole, because it's really about communicating, like, here is overall why you would choose us, not the other options available, because you don't want to be talking at product level necessarily at that stage. And then your messaging hierarchy sits underneath the brand positioning statement, the brand narrative, which is saying for each audience, these are the key points and key messages that we will hone in on within that. And it also stops you from getting too product focused and too benefits focused too early on. You want to be talking about that top level brand as well. Leah says, hey Leah, specific to service providing organizations who also offer partner services, what's the best way to build your narrative to clearly stand apart from partners without speaking poorly about their business? Okay, yeah, the main thing here to say is that brand positioning is really about getting across the truth of the business and really communicating why they'd be a really good option. But there'll be a way to do this where you're not positioning people as bad. Without me knowing a little bit more about your company, it's difficult for me to say exactly how, but I've definitely helped companies with that situation to make sure that the brand narrative is talking about the best foot forward of your business, because actually not looking at like comparing of product and services, we're looking at the overall, here's why you would choose us as a partner, if that makes sense. And Jara, hey, it's so good to see you again. How do you go about asking clients to give you the time to ask the questions you mentioned in order to create the personas? Okay, so all I can do is tell you how I do this when I've been hired for a project to deliver the brand positioning piece with my partners. What we do is the client, i.e. yourself, for example, the marketing manager or the company owner, will decide with the key accounts team who is best to be interviewed. So we would usually have done the internal assessments piece by now, and you'd have defined, right, these are the type of people we want to get to. And so then they would say, this is a list of people, and what you want to do, you want to get the key account manager, the person in your company who is the closest to this individual, and contact them to say, we're really working hard to build our business around you and make you central to everything that we do. Would you be willing to spend 20 minutes with our external partner who is going to be conducting some insight interviews on our behalf? You can talk openly and honestly with them about your needs, your frustrations, your pain points, and then we will then try and turn that into making sure our business is built around you. Once they've said, oh yeah, that sounds fine, you would then, so in the example of how I do it, I then reach out to them to select an appropriate time slot, and like 2 or 3 attempts to call them and email them, say, hey, Gerard has said that you'd be willing to talk to me. This is the point of the interview. Here's a link to schedule with me directly. And then I've never found that clients weren't willing to do it. And actually, as an exercise, clients tend to say this was so valuable to us as well to have been asked and to see that you care. And then, of course, the insights as well, when presented back to the business, is a real feel good for the business as well. I do often suggest that people give some kind of gift as well, because it's their key client, sending something afterwards, whether it's a voucher or like some kind of goodwill. I don't recommend it to be money off one of our products or a discount, because it's just a bit like naff, because we're almost trying to sell to them. It's just giving them something completely selfless to say, thank you so much. We really value and appreciate the time that you took. I hope that helps. And Jara has a follow-up question. Just a follow-up, would you then advise to always have someone outside the company to conduct the interviews? It doesn't have to be someone outside the company, but it does need to be someone who has had experience with brand positioning. You know, you don't want to get these interviews wrong. And really, it is a very robust process that's very specialist, and it's a process that you don't want to fall down along the way. One of the common things I see that I would alert people to, and something that I will say is probably a frustration of mine about this process, is that I think the reason that so many companies get it wrong is that they go to design studios for their brand. So they think, oh, we need to refresh our brand. So what can we do? And they go to a creative studio, a design company, and say, okay, great, we need a brand. And then they do a bit of like workshop type work to talk to you about your values and things like that. The problem with this is that it's not a strategic process. It's based on client insight. So these people are being asked to do stuff that isn't necessarily within their comfort zone. A bit like asking me, can I create you a logo? Unfortunately, it would look terrible, but you'd be able to visually see that. And so you would say, Jay, this is awful, like this doesn't work. But when it comes to our messaging, we so often trust creative studios with not just the creative, which is what they're incredible at, but we also ask them to then craft the messaging that goes with it, which is like a missing piece in the puzzle, in the process. And that's the piece that brand positioning fills. So that's why you often see brands that are just they look amazing, but they're just saying like, we're changing the way this sector works, or we're the best at what we do, or we're the experts. Or one of my favorites is like, say the company's called like Go Electronics, like we are Go Electronics. Like it's very, it's where creatives haven't known what to say with the messaging. And so they just kind of like come up with this like just message that doesn't really mean anything. And then companies are so happy with the result because it looks so cool. But when a brand strategist like me looks at it, I'm like, well, there's no brand positioning there. It's a rebrand that looks beautiful and not taken away from the work that those creatives do. But actually, this is a huge missed opportunity. So yeah, that's something to really look out for. Please don't go to creative studios who don't specialize in brand positioning. And even if you are, like, go to them and ask them about brand positioning, and then watch this back and make sure they've definitely covered all the steps. And don't let them tell you, oh, don't worry, you don't need to find out what client insights, you don't need to do this, you don't need to do that, because you definitely do. So yeah, just a nice little point there. Michelle, hey Michelle. So any tips on how to convince leadership that brand strategy is key as a base for marketing and design in general? Yeah, 100%. So when it comes to brand positioning, brand strategy, it's almost like that's where we need to start in the overall process. I would suggest starting higher up than that. And I think that the session on January 11th will be really useful for you, Michelle. If you haven't already registered, I think you may have, I can't remember, where we look at how to set, the goals for the plan and how to get really organized for 2023. What we want to be doing is setting an overall budget and then overall objectives of what we need to achieve. Now, I would argue that without brand strategy and brand positioning, it's not actually possible to effectively deliver on a strategy, because in the past, it was enough to throw out some ads on LinkedIn or throw out some emails and get like work through the door. But now buyers expect so much more. They need all their questions answered. They need you to have built trust with them online. They need to have been recommended to you by their peers. And so what people tend to find is they're like, well, we're running pay-per-click advertising. Why is it that we're not getting enough leads, or why is it not working very well? Well, if there's no brand positioning, if you're getting clicks, but there's nothing to really encourage the person, this is why you choose us, not the other options, you are kind of just a landing page that is easy to bounce off. And so you think about that in any element of your marketing. Without brand positioning, it's really difficult to make a case for even if we're more expensive, you'd want to choose us. Because I've got an article on my website about brand positioning, and it's talking about this idea of like price sensitivity. People get really mad that like, oh, you said that you wouldn't base the decision on price, but that's exactly what you have done in the end. And it's like, well, sorry, but if they're presented with 3 different options and they're all roughly the same, and no one's standing out to say, here's why we would be better for you over the other options. My advice to you, Michelle, would be to really read up on brand positioning. I'm going to be sending out a few articles, so I'll be packaging up this webinar as a replay in the next few days, and I'm going to be sending it out to you guys with some resources as well. So spend some time like reading the different reports and articles that I send along with that, so that you can get through to them why this stuff is so important. I have got an article on my website, tambinimarketing.co.uk, on what the budget should be, because a lot of the time say we're not spending that on that, and it's like, well, if we had a healthy budget, we actually would allocate a certain amount to brand building. I think actually, Michelle, on your point, like convincing leadership, like educating and building a case and learning from the absolute experts in marketing globally. When I was in corporate 7 years ago, before I set up my business, that was like 40% of my job. My main goal was, how do I get this business to understand the role that marketing plays? How do I get this business to understand that we have to take this seriously, that we need the right budget, that brand is everything? And just really learning about like how buyers buy today is another good one, and sharing that with them. Download the Gartner Future of Sales Report 2025, just typing that into the chat, Gartner Future of Sales 2025 report. And that has loads of data about how people buy today and things like that. Just looking at TikTok. Will you be posting this on your podcast as a replay? I will, Christine. It's going to be on the podcast and on YouTube as well. Obviously, the links in my bio have got like webinar replays and podcast link. So have a look. If you want to make sure you get that, just go to my website, tambinimarketing.co.uk, and sign up for my emails, and then you'll get it to your inbox. It's nice to see you, Christine. Hey, Sophie, always so nice to see you. It's so hard to make our brand clear while we are doing so many activities. 100%. Like, this is the biggest message. Strategic marketers need time to be strategic. If you are a one-person marketing team or a small marketing team and you've been pulled pillar to post and you just like overwhelmed with tactics, it's your job to start to raise up and say, okay, this is not how we need to run. We're not going to get long-term results if we do this. I need more time to focus on X, Y, Z. And by having a clear marketing strategy, you'll be able to like commit to a marketing plan that is achievable with the resources available. Please do sign up for the third in this 3-part webinar series, which is a great start to 2023. We're going to look at setting goals. If you're over on TikTok, you can just go to the link in my bio and register for the next webinar, which is January 11th. If you need any support one-to-one, you can have a look at my one-to-one services. I'm always here for you. And I love that you get all of this free stuff from me. I continue any topics that you want me to cover, just tell me. The more I can do for you without you having to pay me a penny, the better. That makes me happy to know you're succeeding. Nicola, I've been trying to communicate the importance of a marketing plan with internal stakeholders since the last webinar. Nicola, it is really difficult. It's a really long journey to get people to recognise the importance of that. And it feels like you're making progress. That's awesome. So definitely look forward to seeing you in the January webinar, Nicola. I'm sure you're on my list for that. And we can talk about that in more detail, about setting priorities. Yeah, so thanks so much for being here, guys. Have a great rest of your day, and I will speak to you all very soon.